I think it's so difficult now because it's changing so fast. I'm like, there's so many tools. Like I remember when I graduated college, you literally just had to know how to open Photoshop and turn on like a computer, and you were an expert because there was so few people that knew Photoshop, knew Illustrator.
Right.
But now it's like you need to know Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Procreate. You need to know how to do video. You need to know how to create websites. It's kind of crazy the amount of knowledge people expect you to have. I think the biggest thing for if it was me now, and it was really just for being an illustrator or a graphic designer, the first thing I would do is create daily, give yourself projects, have a website, post on social media every day. You really have to put yourself out there now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. I am your host, David Block, and today I am happy to welcome a designer, illustrator, and founder of Atomicchild, Jimmy Bryant. Welcome to the show.
Hey, David, thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. I'm really glad you can make it. I'm looking forward to getting into, hearing about your work, history and where you came from, where you went to, and how you got to where you are today. And so essentially, that is essentially the program. I'm going to ask the very first question, going back to your early influences. I'd like to know, when did you first discover your passion for design? What was it? Was there something that triggered your desire to get into the world of design?
So I kind of have the typical answer, and then I have a little more in-depth one. So as a kid, I drew all the time. I was lucky enough to have parents that never discouraged it. So I was drawing ever since I was a little kid, and I just continued to draw, and nobody ever told me no. As far as like kind of what maybe started getting me into thinking about more than just doodling was, I'm a kid of the 80s, so
Yeah.
cartoons, comic books. Those were my very early inspirations. I mean, it's the 80s. I was watching cartoons every Saturday morning.
Right. Right. I'm right there with you. In fact, I used to sit right up against the TV and I try to watch and see, how do they make that stuff? What's going on there? So I really enjoyed that. I actually got into stop motion animation after watching a lot of just a heck of a lot of cartoons, of course.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as soon as I could get toys of like, He-Man, Ninja Turtles, I mean, all that stuff's really hot because we're older and that's all the stuff we had as kids and they're selling it to us. But like, those were amazing. And it was just being able to see something that's 2D into 3D and a product was kind of, at that time, I had no idea what that was influencing me to do, but was a super big influence on me.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Now you went to, you went to Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, right?
Yes, I did.
And you went there for your BFA in illustration. And, I'd love to know after all that time that you spent in school, we all spend in school, or those of us that go to school. I'd like to know, what was the biggest takeaway or takeaways that you still use in your creative process today from that time?
Well, if I just I graduated in like 2002, so that was a while ago. I mean, one of the biggest things obviously was the introduction to digital artwork. Like before I went to college, I didn't even know that existed.
Right.
So that is something I do every day, use a computer. Um, I think, just some of the basic things that I was just so unaware of because I grew up on a farm in the middle of South Dakota. Just, looking at design, having a critical eye and like composition, like I never even knew that existed, and like placing things on the page so that they make more sense and your eye can follow it around. That's definitely things that I still think about to this day. Um, yeah, a lot of those type of like basic things that just everybody takes for granted, but you just have to learn those somewhere before you can forget about them and they go on the back of your head and it's just something you naturally know.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so what inspired you to make, so actually, let me say it this way. I noticed that you pretty much went right into starting your business after college, pretty shortly after college, right?
So
Or when did
so
that come about?
it kind of goes in phases. So
Yeah.
After college, I was your typical had a fine arts degree with illustration. I was trying to get jobs. It's the early 2000s. Email is still very new to everybody. You know, my professors trained me to send postcards and call people on the phone, which you should still do that today. But
Right.
um, so that's kind of where I was trying to find jobs. But no, I started Atomicchild back then, but it was it was not what it is today. It was just freelance work. I was trying to get I don't even know if they do these anymore. But there was like newspapers. Every city kind of had like these um, what is it called? It's not like subgenre newspapers, not the main thing, and they would talk about like all the different events going on.
Yeah.
Like here in Denver, it was called Westward, and I would reach out to them and get to do little like side illustration jobs,
Mm.
and I got to do like some covers for that. So that's kind of how I started. But I was just working a regular job. I was in construction rental, which I ended up doing for like 13 years of my life,
Oh,
and doing illustration and artwork part time. You know, just at when I was at nighttime. You know, I would get home from work. It was many years later when I actually got to start doing this for a living.
got it. I see. Okay. If you're enjoying this video, please take a moment to hit that like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our future videos. Thank you. Right. So when you started and you got into creating your illustrative style, were there artists that you looked at, or were there particular types of work that you focused on to get your inspiration?
Yeah, of course. Early on, my name, obviously Atomicchild. The reason it's called that is because my favorite artist in college was Keith Haring, and he
Oh,
had really like a bold, thick line style, and I really liked that, and that's kind of how I always drew. And then when I found that, it really kind of was like I just didn't know that was a possible thing you could do, or people cared about, or would pay you to do that.
yeah.
So I kind of had that kind of sketch thick line style for a long time. But I mean, really, the stuff that really changed how my artwork worked was when I started doing a lot of band design. The biggest thing was I was doing a lot of band design. I was hand drawing everything, scanning it in on a tiny scanner. Remember when you had to like do a 10 by 8.5 by 11, scan it in, piece them all together in Photoshop, line them up. So I was doing that for band merch. And then one day I was helping my father re-roof the garage, and I fell off and broke my wrist. And I still had to make money, so I started doing digital composition work in Photoshop. So that made me really go heavy in the digital. And then once my arm healed and I started doing, more stuff digitally, I stopped doing like photo composition stuff and I started drawing. And then really, like, I kind of had two styles. Like, we all, once I started doing digital, back when Instagram was really good, I was doing one of those things where we do a 365-day challenge. So I was like, I need something quick and simple to do that because I need to create a piece of artwork every day. So that's where I started doing the kind of thick line design style that we all know very well at this point. So I did
Yeah.
that for a long time, and then I just, I kept going back to like I needed to do something else that was kind of an easy copyable style, and um, so I started looking at inspiration in old patches, like Boy Scout patches, and then that's kind of where I started this kind of new, kind of more illustrated patch style that I do to this day.
That's outstanding. I'm looking at your website right now. I see, for instance, the Bareface waffle beanie.
Yep, yeah,
I love
I got
that
that bare
design.
face right here.
Yeah, there it is. There, that's the one right there. Coincidental, you got it on your head. That's actually, I love this style of design, this kind of illustrative style. I try to teach my students how to do this every year. I'm not the best at teaching it. I would love to get some pointers at some point in time.
I think like your illustration style is so hard to figure out because for me, I mean, I didn't really start drawing like this until my 36. So it's like, I had to go through 36 years of trying things out, getting better, learning what it means, how to do this, and then also trying to work within like people have different styles that you do for projects,
Yeah.
styles you do for yourself. I mean, some people just do one style. That's kind of me now, But when I was doing band merch, like I started doing a lot of photo manipulation stuff because that's really cheap work, and I wasn't going to spend hours and hours doing those designs. So
Yeah.
you end up developing different styles that way too that can affect you. So yeah, that's one thing that's always hard when people ask about style because it's like, man, if I was lucky and I started the same style when I was in my early 20s, that's cool. But I feel like as creatives, we're always just even once we find something that works, like you just kind of get tired of it, and you're like, well, what can I do next? you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and looking back over your career and through your portfolio, you got a wide variety of styles. They're bold and vibrant colors. I'm curious if there was a project or two that stands out to you that was that project that solidified that you knew exactly you were doing the right thing. Like this is you're so proud of it that this was exactly what you needed to do. Can you talk a little bit about one of those?
I think those can mean a lot of different things to people.
Yeah.
I would say throughout kind of my career, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I mean, the first job I ever got that I got paid for was like a side illustration in one of those little like weekly newspapers. And that really meant a ton for me because before that, uh, I wasn't really sure if anybody liked my work or would ever pay me for that.
Hmm.
So that was just a simple line illustration that went in the newspaper. So that was a really big one. I think a lot of band work. I mean, even though you work for big names and stuff, it's just such a weird business. But one of the ones that really stuck out for me was I did some of the farewell posters for Grateful Dead's last tour, which, if anybody knows, now they're on their 10th last tour, but it was their last tour in 2015. I got to do like a lot of their final posters, so that was a
Wow.
pretty big
Great.
job.
Yeah.
As far as band work, Fish has been a really good client of mine over the years. Those
Yeah.
were really good. But yeah, I mean, those are some of the. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Like my first Red Rocks poster I got to do for the amphitheater here in Colorado. I think the first one I did was for Joe Russo and the Almost Dead, I believe is their name. So that was really cool getting to do a poster for that venue that's known, famous worldwide.
That's fantastic. I love doing gig posters. It's actually one of my favorite times of the year is when I get my students into a gig poster project. It's a lot of fun.
Oh,
Love it.
that's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Band merch design, though, I don't know if you've ever done it, but I did it for a decade, and it'll make you a little jaded.
Is that right? Okay. Okay. All right. And so now you've already mentioned Fish. You've worked with Nathaniel Radcliffe, the lacrosse footwear. Now we talked about projects that you're super proud of. I'm also curious about projects that gave you a headache. So I'd like to know, were there any creative challenges in any of those big scale, high profile projects that you could talk about?
I think for me, the hardest thing about being an artist, and I know a lot of people, especially graphic designers, really good at this,
Yeah.
is well, not everybody, but usually graphic designers are because that's a lot of their job. It's like taking the feedback. And like for me, taking the direction from an art director, that was always my hardest part. And it's probably why I ended up just working for myself and created my own brand was because as soon as I got a little bit of feedback that I didn't like or agree with, I would just check out of the project. So it made a lot of projects hard. I would say a lot of the band design is really hard because you would think that a band would come to you. Now, some do. A band would come to you with like an idea of what they want, but they're really like, they usually have nothing to do with it. And it's a company that's doing it for them. So they're just scattershotting and they're like, here's these 50 pieces of inspiration, send me 5 designs. That stuff's frustrating because you're like, well, what's the direction? There's no real, like, that's confusing. Because a lot the kind of the fun part about being an illustrator, on the other hand, is especially when you get to do like editorial illustration, is they just give you a story and you just get to read this cool story that you would have never read in your life, and you're like, now I get to draw a picture for the story. So that's fun problem solving.
Yeah.
But for me, it was a lot of it was just art direction that wasn't clear. I mean, that's kind of always been the hard part.
Mhm.
But yeah, just stuff like that. I mean, there's always projects that you do. And then they just never see the light of day. That's kind of frustrating too, because you're like, well, cool, but nobody's ever going to see this. So yes, things like that.
Got it. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Now, my next question is about your creative process. Now, I'm sure over time it's modified. You've modified it a little bit. You've changed it a little bit. I do over time. I've learned different ways, better ways of, brainstorming, better ways of doing research and things like that, and doing my sketches and the whole process. But I would like to know if you could talk about and break down your creative process when it comes to translating a brand's essence into a visual design. Like to create these stickers, these are it's definitely a challenge, I'm sure. But how do you go about to capture the spirit of a brand like Jeep or Phish in your designs like that?
So this could be a good or bad answer. Luckily, since about 2000, I would say 15 or 16, I've kind of had these two different styles going on, and they come to me for my style. So I really just, and if it has something to do with outdoors or specific area, like I'll do research on that to make sure it has those key things.
Yeah.
And that, but like Jeep is, they drive outdoors. Like that's right up my alley. That's all I draw is outdoor scenery. But before that, before people were coming to me for my style, which is that takes a while to get to where people will reach out to you for stuff. I went, 16, 17 years before people would reach out to me specifically for what I was doing. But you get a brief, and then you just, when they're not reaching out to you for a specific style, you just have to dig through the brief, find directions that fit, do a couple sketches here and there loosely, and see if that's the correct direction. That's kind of what I used to do before.
Right.
Now, I've just been doing this so long, I kind of have a system. A big thing for me, you can see just from looking at my work, is like I love to pick a shape and then like fill that shape in. So it's kind of already giving me like a border or a direction. So it's like, I'm thinking of a bison. Okay, cool. I'll take a bison and I'll do my style in that. So that's kind of my process now, and I do everything digitally. I haven't physically drawn with my hand like on a piece of paper in 10 years plus at this point. I do everything, just mouse and Photoshop. I've just been doing that all my life, so that's kind of my style. But yeah, that's kind of my process this day and age.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, and that answers my question. I was going to say, how many sketchbooks have you gathered in your?
I mean, before this, I have bins full of them, like just. But now it's just the endless files that I can't find on my computers.
I can completely relate. Yeah, no, I've still got a stack of sketchbooks as well. My sketching has now moved to my electronic paper. That's where I go to now. But I always start with sketching. But so you go straight to the computer and you trust your skills. You trust your knowledge of the ability to create what you want to create. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, now I'm either creating something for myself, which means I'm already picking what I want to do, or like people are just coming to me. So just kind of like a project I did before where I did get a little direction was I did this mural in a bank in Fort Collins. And they obviously were like, this is Fort Collins. We want your style, but you need to have these things, pieces of the city. So, obviously I just adapt those things but they're still coming to me for my style and my direction. So I'm lucky enough to be at that point in my career now.
Got it. I see. Okay. Excellent. Now, I'm curious about your education, or maybe not your education, just education in general, to get somebody to the place where you are to learn illustration, design, do the sort of work that you're doing. What would you say to a student that's coming out of high school, or even considering moving on to college? What path would you suggest that they follow? Type of education and experience to gather?
You're asking a guy who graduated high school in 1997 and college in 2002.
Right.
That was a whole different world. If you're asking me for today, learn how to prompt type, I guess. I think it's so difficult now because it's changing so fast. I'm like, there's so many tools. Like I remember when I graduated college, you literally just had to know how to open Photoshop and turn on like a computer, and you were an expert because there was so few people that knew Photoshop, knew Illustrator. But now it's like you need to know Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Procreate. You need to know how to do video. You need to know how to create websites. It's kind of crazy the amount of knowledge people expect you to have. I think the biggest thing for if it was me now, and it was really just for being an illustrator or a graphic designer, the first thing I would do is create daily, give yourself projects, have a website, post on social media every day. You really have to put yourself out there now and get eyes on who you are. And if you're consistent with that, I think you're going to get further ahead than most people, because most people don't consistently do those things. Yes, posting every day is a chore, creating a little short video is a chore, but if that's something you're doing every day and you do that for years, I'm talking years, sometimes it takes years. Like I didn't get anywhere near successful with art until I was around 36, 37. So later in my life, and this is after trying and trying and trying. But I would network with people in real life. I would be posting. I would let people know that you're doing artwork. There's the one that I didn't come up with this, but somebody said this once, and it's always been in the back of my head. The greatest artists in the world, we have no idea who they are because they're not showing us their artwork. Show your artwork, network in real life, go to AIGA or whatever is in your community. Networking is still so huge, even this day and age. Like, I'm talking networking in real life too. Like, obviously post your artwork, have a website, have a solid design portfolio of what you have. But networking in person is going to get you so far. And I think it's even more valuable now because so many people are overloaded with social media and everything that there is, where if you can make a real contact in person, just from the way my business works now, where we sell products to retail stores and all kinds of stuff, like almost all of those have been through meeting that person at trade conferences. And this is in 2023, 2024, 2022. This is not online. So network, just create your craft every day, do as many projects as you can. I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, but when you're young and just starting, take as many jobs as you can, take free jobs. All you want to do is you just got to think about you're a batter at a plate. Like, you just need the reps. You got to do as much work as you possibly can.
Right. Absolutely. That's the best advice, I think. Networking, making connections, yeah, absolutely. In fact, when I think about my time in college, I didn't know why I was doing it or what benefit it would be to me, but I still keep in touch with people that I've made connections with back then. I got a job from one of my teachers while I was in college, 2002. I'm still in touch with him. In fact, he was on one of my shows recently. So
yeah, I still know a few of my professors and keep in touch with them through social media. And yeah, you just never know where a real life networking is going to get you. It's literally impossible to know. But if you don't put yourself out there, you'll never find out.